to another form of, well, perhaps there's a certain amount of bulk data collection in all this. Patrick, FedNow has been rolled out.
Rolled out yesterday morning here. So what is FedNow? This is supposedly here. Well, we asked that question in a second, but the fast payment network. So the question is this the CBDC? Is this the first step to the central bank digital currency that we've talked about, that many others are talking about? It's quite a big conversation now. And the answer to that question is...
Well, before we get on to that, I just want to highlight this because this is Project Fast. And the question is, where is FedNow coming from? And it seems to be that FedNow plus other fast payment systems around the world are basically based on the framework that this comes from. This is the World Bank. Project Fast is about frictionless, affordable, safe, timely transactions. But look who it's funded by, Patrick, in the bottom right hand of that slide, sponsored by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This is perhaps not a surprise to anybody. Their little website has a nice graphic of the world showing exactly where FAST has been rolled out or is in the process of being rolled out at the moment, including the United States. So let's come back to FedNow.
Well, the question I was about to ask, which I didn't get to finish asking, is FedNow the first step of the rollout of the central bank digital currency? And the answer is clearly yes. That's the point that I was previously going to make. Slightly lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. But anyway, so here's the Bank of International Settlements. This is the website here. They've released this report a couple of weeks ago. I don't know, sure if you've covered it or not, but the blueprint for a future monetary system, improving the old, enabling the new. Very important report. You can see the PDF link down at the bottom there. So let's just look at that for a moment here. Here's the report. You can basically find this online. We've read this report. I've read most of it. And the language in here, quite frankly, is shocking. This is the type of language, the pejorative language, the assumptions that central banks have these certain attributes that the public trust and love and so forth. You have to remember they've been operating basically an opaque system. So it goes through the tokenization of the new monetary system under this new regime. And you can see, so it's great detail here. This is a good guide here for what they have in store. So I encourage people to go read this document and try to learn and understand what's in here. But we'll give you the basic boil down of this as well. So let's look at the key points. What are they actually showing here? What is this? Well, FedNow, or this central bank digital currency, what they're proposing here is a real-time settlement on the blockchain of transactions. So a tokenization of assets. Again, we can go into very deep detail on each of these bullet points, but this is just a summary. A global unified ledger of assets, okay? And also a private ledger for banks, this is important, but an open retail ledger for the public. So they have their own sort of system behind a wall and certain privileges, and you will have a different open, transparent system that everybody can see and track and is programmable. And they're putting interoperability as the main feature, and this is ISO 20022. So that's like the SWIFT messaging system. So that's the enhanced data that goes with every transaction. So this a token, just understand that a token or a transaction is basically a package of data. And so what is the data have now on a SWIFT transaction? It's limited. What is it going to have with this? Unlimited. And also interoperability with other big databases. So you can see the potential for this with programmable currencies, which is what we'll show you in a second, is pretty immense and quite horrifying, actually. So, and smart contracts and the Internet of Things marries those two concepts in this document. So now we can see what the Internet of Things was for and how it fits into this new financial world order. So very clearly, smart contracts, if you're familiar with Ethereum and some of these other blockchain technologies, that's the basis of that. Again, much more complicated than what we're saying here. We're giving you a basic summary here. So let's look at the rest. The total centralization, no peer-to-peer. That's the main point, okay? This is what they're communicating. Centralization's good, decentralization, not good. No peer-to-peer transactions allowed. They're too risky. Central banks are the only trusted source of money. They boast about this throughout the document, time and time again. They say, we are trusted. We've earned the trust of the global public because we're that trustworthy. They keep repeating that over and over. And therefore, we're the only ones who should be doing transactions. Central banks will have sovereign immunity, okay? That means they are sovereign immune for everything, basically. So that private ledger that we showed you, the central bank's own books, that has sovereign immunity. So they can do as they wish, to who they wish, and whatever. They're not liable really for anything according to this. Cryptocurrency is bad fundamentally, and decentralization is dangerous as a concept. So that's the basic takeaway of what's in this BIS document. Know it and learn it. So we've got a really nice paper that was written here called The 7 Pillars of the CBD System that gets into some of the details of this. These are the 7 pillars of the CBD system. You can see security issuance, the ISO 222, instant payment, cross-border settlement, digital ID, stable coins. The holy trinity here, Mike, is the social credit, the digital wallet, and the CBDC. These things, these 3 things they go together and they become fully operable once the system goes live. So that's the really important takeaway on this. So just a little bit of a background, the Bank for International Settlements in Basel. This is a great book here, The Tower of Basel. It goes into all of the various things, how this bank was funded and some of the nefarious activities that they get up to. And just think about, the HSBC drug money laundering scandal, Mike, and all these other things that we've seen time and time again, all these scandals. Those happen behind their wall, behind their curtain. Nothing changes here for the central banks. They carry on business as usual, but we get a new trackable, completely controlled surveillance-based system. That's the gist of this. So here's the story here. The Guardian reported this. I think this was 8 years ago. How the Bank of England helped the Nazis sell gold stolen from the Czechs and from the Bank of International Settlements. They facilitated that. So, and here's a good guide here. You mentioned this before the show, Mike. The Atlantic Council has put here the Central Bank Digital Currency Tracker. What is this? This is basically a guide to say around the world how far countries are along the line of adoption on this. So they've got an interactive map here. So you go to this website and you can pull it up and you can see the different countries. The green countries are in a pilot. The aqua countries are in development. The purple countries are just at the research stage, and a few of them have canceled. That's Nigeria. They're the only ones who have actually implemented it with a huge backlash. They're the pink magenta countries there. And then in terms of other countries, you've got Russia also, along with India. They have pilot programs going on this, as does China, as does Australia. As we said, the FedNow, this needs to be updated, I guess. Well, they haven't done officially the CBDC. A few countries have canceled it, okay? And what are those countries? Those will be in that color there. That's Ecuador. Ecuador has shelved this whole program. They've basically abandoned it. And Senegal as well in Africa. And I think maybe one more country, I'm not sure. But anyway, that's a good thing to give you an idea of where this project is globally. So go to the Atlantic Council's website. I'm not endorsing the Atlantic Council because I think it's a very corrupt and nefarious deep state organization. But if you want to find out how far along this thing is, there's the timeline, the race for future money. You can see they're pushing this pretty hard, Mike.
Indeed, which takes us to a little bit of video.
Right. So here is one of the chiefs of the Bank for International Settlements talking about the programmable money, programmable currency. And this is perhaps the most horrifying aspect of the CBDC. Let's watch this.
Our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash. And there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is.
So what do you think about that? That's Agustín Carstens. He's spokesperson, I guess, for the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland.
Well, I mean, what can we say about it? It's the whole thing is about the control of people's transactions. And I don't think we can. I keep saying we can't look at one particular area of policy these days on its own. We've got to look at it in the broader picture of what other developments are. So when you take that, and we're going to come on to Nigel Farage again in a second, we take that issue and we take the online safety issue and what we're allowed to say online, behavioral economics side of things, behavioral change. These are all coming together into one pretty unpleasant future for ourselves if we allow it to continue.
And so he's really talking about the cash there, saying how dangerous cash is because the central bank doesn't know where the money's going or coming from.
Right.
So so we have to basically relinquish all of our privacy for financial transactions or custodial assets because of what? Because of terrorists, arms dealers, or human traffickers, and organized crime. So that's what he's proposing. So they have the tools for a 15-minute city, for instance. Your currency could be programmed to not be usable outside of your the M25 or your restrictions of movement. Add the carbon restrictions in there for the environment. You can see where this is going, right?
Yeah, particularly if you take into account that people trafficking, organized crime, this is stuff which is state-sponsored in many cases. It's all around conflict zones, which states are behind. It's not us as individuals that are behind these conflict zones. We're not doing the people trafficking. That's the excuse being used to shut us down.
And here's the one you'll absolutely love, Mike. They want to avoid the risk of an early exiter of depositors to prevent bank runs. So they will keep the money that you take and will control it so that the people who get out early or late will have the same status on their money. So who causes bank runs? Is it people or is it banks? Look at the Silicon Valley Bank. Total incompetency caused the crash,
right? Not
the depositors. So it's funny how the banks created the problems and now they've got all the solutions for this. So, and one of the other things they're going to do, if we look up on screen here, the Restrict Act, we talked about this in previous programs, Mike. This was going to make VPNs illegal. So what they're concerned about, and this was pushing back here, this is a great activist website here, Stop the Restrict Act. So they want to control the on-ramps and the off-ramps to things like cryptocurrency exchanges and also get rid of anonymity. This is a really high priority. It's very important for them. So this is really important. So this is the type of activism that stopped the Restrict Act here. So there is hope in that sense. So you can see where it's going with the tech now. They're going to move on VPNs as well. They don't want the ability to have any anonymity online. Or be able to use any encryption, as you said before. So there's a war on right now, and it's really going to be up to, in America, they're really mobilizing and pushing back against this. What's happening in the UK, I'm not sure, or in Europe, but in America, people are starting to realize, including elected representatives, that this might not be a good hill to die on as a congressman or a senator. This brings